Nothing compares to squats, is what the great Tom Platz, owner of probably the best set of legs ever, said. But was he right? So in this video, we're going to go over the benefits of the squat, the myriad of drawbacks, my recommendations, and then answer the question, should you be barbell back squatting? So let's keep it positive and start with the benefits. Now, one of the big ones is that it is probably the single biggest bang for your buck movement in existence, apart from maybe the conventional deadlift. So yes, you are working your quads as a squat pattern. You're also working a hell of a lot of adductor, which I think are underrated just from a pure leg mass standpoint. You're working a surprising amount of calves. You're working glutes, of course, as well as lower back, which some squat patterns simply won't really touch. If you're doing a lot of pendulums, a lot of leg presses, those are great quad movements, and you might even hit a little bit of adductor depending on your stance. But holistically, you're just not working as much overall muscle mass as a back squat. And the advice of shut up and squat that a lot of bros give is not necessarily terrible advice, especially for beginners who are not necessarily limited by some of the drawbacks of squats and kind of just need to focus on a big, hard-hitting movement rather than trying to isolate every single fiber of every single muscle. You can just squat and get a ton of benefits. And if you're pressed for time, I think doing one squat pattern that hits a ton of muscles and then one hinge pattern, probably an RDL or something, is a pretty darn decent overall leg workout. Once you get very, very strong, this certainly has some drawbacks, but for most people, it is a fine movement that provides a ton of benefit. It's also very convenient. Pretty much every gym is going to have not just one squat rack, but multiple. And so there really is no excuse of, oh, I don't have access to this, because pretty much everyone is going to. There also is the social impact. People don't go up to you and ask like, bro, what's your 4 rep max pendulum squat? No, because it's pretty rare to even see one of those. Whereas the squat is a social lift. Everyone knows it. Pretty much everyone has done it. The sport of powerlifting is at least partially based around it. And so that can be very, very motivating for a lot of people because it just matters more in terms of social proof than a lot of other lifts. I also think there is a cardiovascular component here, especially when you get past 10 reps and especially past 20 reps. I'm not saying it replaces cardio at all, but it can be a bit of a canary in the coal mine. If you do a set of 15 reps in the squat, even if it's very close to failure and it absolutely destroys you and you're on the floor and your heart rate is 200 or something and you're just completely flabbergasted, if that's not the right word. Sounds like it should be the right word. Like you're a little bit flabby and so you're gassed and so, damn it, English. By the way, this video is sponsored by Boostcamp. So I don't care if you're squatting or leg pressing or doing any other movement, you should be tracking it over time to making sure that you are getting better. Also over time. It's hard to get better not over time. And if you're going to track, you might as well track with the best. That is Boostcamp. Plus, you get access to some of the best programs out there. If you're not really sure what to do, you're confused, what movements, what exercises, rep range sets, all that stuff, you can just hop on a fixed plan, be observant, work hard, and it will work well. So once again, thank you to Boostcamp for sponsoring this video. Another benefit is that carryover tends to be somewhat of a one-way street. So if you get a much stronger squat for reps, and then you go back to your leg presses, which you've been neglecting, your leg press might have just completely gone up with your squat on a 1-to-1 ratio. The opposite will probably not hold true, just because leg presses are not working a lot of the stabilizers, and the squat is a more technical movement. I've also found, and I'm not a strength athlete at all, really, but I have found that your squat helps your deadlift far more than your deadlift helps your squat. I've gone through phases where I didn't really deadlift at all. I just squatted, then I went back to the deadlift, and I was surprised by how good the results were. Hitting PRs after not even doing very much in terms of hinging. Now, some drawbacks are that it is more technical and it's going to take a little bit longer to learn rather than just plopping down in the latest and greatest machine that kind of just sets you in a fixed position and you can't really mess it up. You can absolutely mess up the squat. And as a coach, I see this happen on a very, very regular basis. I see leg presses messed up as well, but there's just a lot less room for error. It also often requires quite a bit more mobility in order to get into the right positions. A lot of machines sort of take into account the fact that a lot of people don't have great mobility, particularly around the ankle, and so they account for that. Whereas the squat, in order to perform a pretty upright Platz style squat, in most cases, you need quite a lot of ankle mobility, which a lot of people simply won't have. Now, you can get it over time. I think this is something that can absolutely be improved. But for some people, it is a barrier to entry, or it causes them to squat in a way that is a lot more hip dominant, and it's probably not going to be as effective for overall growth. There are also a lot more bracing requirements, especially if you have imbalances in the hips, in the back, as I do. It's just going to be a lot tougher compared to something where you can just lie down like a leg press. Now, that could be a drawback. It could be a benefit. I don't think they're worth completely getting rid of, because if you get rid of them, you're no longer challenging that capacity, and therefore it's not going to get any better. So it's sort of a balancing act between making sure you're doing enough of it that it improves, but not doing so much and biting off more than you can chew, and either hurting yourself or just hurting your progress. Even worse. And there are other drawbacks as well: less stability, high axial fatigue, cardiorespiratory fatigue. But I think a lot of these just apply to more advanced lifters who are powering away at heavy tonnages. Whereas I see mostly beginners using these excuses. So, if you're squatting a plate and a half, and you're like, cardio is really a limiting factor. Well, if it's a limiting factor for you when you're doing a set of 10 with a plate and a half, I would say you're kind of calling yourself out, actually. And so my recommendations are, for the bar position, high bar for sure. If you're a power lifter, you want to squat max tonnages. For most people, low bar is going to be better. But if you just want a good general movement to work mostly lower body, I think high bar is the way to go. Keeps you a little bit more upright, feels more comfortable for almost everyone. I hear a few people who say low bar is more comfortable, but that is absolutely a pretty small minority of people. Depth, I don't think you have to go ATG. I don't think the benefits are tremendous in terms of really getting an extreme range of motion. I think as long as you are around parallel, slightly above, at parallel, slightly below, I think you are pretty much good to go from a depth position. Tempo, I think having an extremely slow eccentric is probably not super necessary.
Tom lowered himself slowly, taking about 3 seconds to reach the bottom. This time, under tension was key to his muscle development. Platz emphasized the negative or eccentrics part of the squat.
If you find you get achy knees, that might be a good introduction. Pausing at the bottom could also be a good idea if you tend to get tendonitis or maybe some hip issues from slamming out of the bottom position. But I think for most people, if you look at Tom Platz squat, he wasn't doing a super controlled eccentric. He was really just trying to hammer out as many reps with as much weight as possible, often doing these kind of rest pause type of sets that he is famous for. And you're not going to be doing max reps if you are taking a laboriously slow eccentric phase. Belt, I personally don't use a belt, but if you find benefit from using a belt, I think it is a good idea. It can allow you to move more weight for more reps, and probably a good thing overall. In terms of rep range, a lot of people will suggest 5 to 10. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think 5 is a good minimum. Below 5, it's just probably not going to be quite as much volume and as many reps per set. So 5 is a pretty good minimum. Do your 5s. 10s, I think, are good as well. 8s are good. 6s are good. Anywhere in that range. 10 to 15, this is where cardio might start to creep in. But there's nothing wrong with 10 to 15. You can absolutely build a ton of muscle with 10 to 15.
Reps are very important.
So what are reps for you?
At least 15.
15,
at least.
15 to 20, then 25 and 30. this is where you're getting into where your performance is going to tank after one set. If you do a really hard set of 30, it's going to take you a long time to recover. Mentally, it's very, very challenging. You're probably going to be pretty wiped out after that. If you come back from a set of 30 and do the same weight again, you might get like 15 or 20 reps on that second set. There's nothing necessarily wrong with that, but I think for most people from a hypertrophy perspective, a set of 30, 25, even 20 is probably a little bit on the high side. It is very taxing. I've been enjoying it, but I think most people will not. In terms of volume, I actually did the small off squat program, which was 4x9 one day, and then 5x7, then 7x5, followed the day after that by 10x3. And that was a brutal program. I forget how many sets it is, 25, 26, something like that. So it's a lot of volume, a lot of hard sets. I got better though. I got better. My max went up and I put on size. I was super hungry. So I think you can probably recover from more squatting than you think. It just probably won't be sustainable. And I think dumping all of your lower body training into just the barbell back squat is probably a big mistake. So you want some diversification here. You want some pendulums, you want some leg press, you maybe want some body weight stuff, you want some isolations, leg extensions, reverse Nordic curls, all this good stuff. Because I think one movement, even if it's a really good one, is simply not going to be enough to maximize hypertrophy. Again, even Tom Platz, he did his leg extensions and other stuff as well. So should you back squat? I would say if you have access to only a barbell and a squat rack and no machines or leg presses or any fancy stuff, the answer is absolutely yes, and that can serve you very, very well. If you do have access to this immense gym with all these other options and your only goal is hypertrophy, I would say if you are a beginner, it's just such a fundamental skill and such a basic movement that you probably do want to spend some time on the barbell back squat. But if you're more advanced, you've squatted in the past, you tend to get out of position or you tend to get injured from it and other options seem to just treat you better, there's nothing wrong at all with ditching the barbell back squat. And that's what I did when I got my QL injury and doing like Smith machine stuff, doing machine squats. They actually treated me very, very well indeed. So I think sometimes taking some time away from the barbell back squat and maybe returning to it a little bit later can be a good strategy for sort of late intermediates or advanced lifters. So let me know in the comments, are you a back squatter? Are you a back squatty, naughty, thoughty? And if you are not, what is your go-to squat pattern that you prefer? Anyway, that is all for this video. If you want to support the channel, you can check out my books. They will serve you well in your training journey. They will teach you a lot and you will get more out of your time and effort in the gym. Thank you so much for support and thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.